They threw her away like trash, discarded and left for dead. The Iconian infant, a mere newborn with twisted limbs and translucent blue skin, lay helpless and alone in the unforgiving wilderness of Ethera. Her own people, an advanced spacefaring race, had deemed her deformed appearance a disgrace not worth saving. But the Iconians, in their arrogance, had no idea what they were truly abandoning. For within the tiny, struggling form of Kaid, a power lay dormant, an incredible force inextricably tied to the unique energy field of Ethera itself, a power that could one day change the fate of worlds. As Kaid's life force dwindled, her cries echoing unheard across the remote human colony world, an unlikely savior emerged. Chris Morales, the 17-year-old son of the chief of a tribe living outside the technologically advanced human settlement, discovered the dying alien girl. His people, viewed as primitive savages by the modern colony, had long ago rejected advanced technology in favor of a simple existence in harmony with Ethera's primal nature. Chris knew that without immediate intervention, the frail Iconian child would perish. With unwavering resolve, he gathered Kaid into his arms and raced back to his village, nestled deep within an ancient forest the Iconians dismissed as a useless wasteland. There, the tribe's healer marveled at the infant's resilience, for she had survived an ordeal that should have been fatal for an Iconian newborn. Under the tireless care and unbridled compassion of Chris and his tribe, Kaid slowly regained her strength. An unbreakable bond blossomed between the human boy and the alien child he had saved, a connection that would shape the destiny of their two species. But unknown to all, a greater threat loomed on the horizon. On the Iconian homeworld, a virulent plague had begun to spread, one that would inevitably reach Ethera. Desperate for a cure, the Iconians had journeyed to the colony under the guise of trade, secretly determined to find the key to their salvation somewhere on the planet's surface. They would stop at nothing to achieve their goal, even if it meant trampling the innocent in their wake. But the Iconians had gravely underestimated the indomitable human spirit and the transformative power of unconditional love. For as Kaid thrived in the care of her human rescuers, an ancient force stirred within her, one that would either herald the salvation of worlds or their total destruction. As the years passed, Kaid blossomed under the watchful guidance of Chris and his tribe. Her once twisted limbs straightened and grew strong, her translucent blue skin taking on a healthy glow. But it was her mind that truly flourished. Chris, now a man grown, spent countless hours with Kaid, teaching her the ways of the forest, the secrets of the hunt, and the ancient wisdom of his people. As Kaid grew, so too did her bond with the land. She could feel Ethera's energy pulsing through her veins, a tangible force that responded to her every emotion. When she laughed, flowers bloomed. When she cried, the skies wept with her. And when she raged, the very earth trembled. Chris watched in awe as Kaid's powers manifested. He saw her coax a fallen nestling back to life, the tiny creature fluttering from her hands on newly mended wings. He witnessed her calm a raging river, the waters parting before her like a curtain, and he marveled as she whispered to the trees, their branches bending to shield her from the sun. The tribe came to see Kaid as a blessing, a child of Ethera itself. They marveled at her abilities, but more than that, they loved her for her kindness, her curiosity, and her unbreakable spirit. She was one of them, a daughter of the forest, as much a part of their world as the trees and the rivers and the stars. But the outside world would not let them be. Zoran, the Iconian prince tasked with finding a cure for the plague ravaging his people, had grown desperate. His scientists had discovered a link between the plague and the genetic anomalies present in those like Kaid, the ones his people had so callously discarded. He sent his soldiers to scour Ethera, to bring back any abandoned Iconian children they could find. And when they discovered Kaid living among the primal humans, they saw not a child, but a resource to be exploited. The attack came without warning. Iconian soldiers, armed with advanced weapons and shielded by gleaming armor, descended upon the village like a plague of locusts. They demanded that the tribe hand over Kaid, promising mercy in exchange for compliance. Chris stepped forward, his spear held high. "You will not take her," he growled, his voice raw with fury. "She is one of us. She belongs here, with her people." The Iconian commander sneered, his face a mask of disdain. "You primitive savages have no claim on her. She is Iconian, and she will come with us." The battle that followed was fierce and bloody. The tribe fought with the courage of lions, their primitive weapons no match for the Iconians' advanced technology. But they had something the Iconians did not, a deep, unbreakable bond, forged through years of shared hardship and love. Chris fought like a man possessed, his spear a blur of motion as he cut down soldier after soldier. Beside him, Cade wielded the very elements themselves, summoning gusts of wind to knock the Iconians off balance, and calling forth vines to ensnare their legs. In the end, the tribe emerged victorious, but at a terrible cost. Many of their warriors lay dead, their bodies scattered among the smoldering ruins of the village. And as the survivors gathered around the ashes of their homes, they knew that their old life was gone forever. Kaide, her heart heavy with guilt, knew what she had to do. She could not stay, could not risk bringing more death and destruction upon the people she loved. With tears streaming down her face, she hugged Chris tight, whispering words of love and gratitude. But Chris, his eyes hard with persistence, refused to let her go alone. "I made a promise," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I will never abandon you. Where you go, I go." Together they set out into the wilderness, leaving behind the only home they had ever known. They did not know what lay ahead, what dangers they would face, but they had each other, and they had hope. And deep within Kaide, the power of Ethera itself stirred, a glimmer of light in the darkness. For she was more than just an abandoned child, more than just a wielder of strange abilities. She was a key, a catalyst, a spark that could ignite a fire that would change the fate of worlds. The journey ahead would be long and perilous, but Chris and Kaide would face it together, bound by a love that transcended species and circumstance. And in the end, it would be that love, that unbreakable human spirit, that would light the way to salvation. The dense forest canopy swallowed Chris and Kaide as they fled deeper into Ethera's wilderness. Exhaustion clawed at their muscles, but fear of pursuit drove them onward. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they stumbled upon the yawning mouth of a cave, its entrance partially obscured by thick vines. "In here," Chris whispered, guiding Kaide into the shadowy refuge. The cave's cool air soothed their flushed skin as they ventured further inside. Kaide's translucent blue skin seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, casting eerie patterns on the rough stone walls. "Wait," Kaide said, her voice hushed with awe. She placed her palm against the cave wall, feeling the familiar thrum of Ethera's energy pulsing beneath her fingertips. "There's something here." Chris squinted, his eyes adjusting to the gloom. Intricate carvings emerged from the shadows, covering the walls in a tapestry of ancient symbols and figures. "Etherian hieroglyphs," he breathed, tracing the etched lines with calloused fingers. As they deciphered the primitive etchings, a chilling tale unfolded before them. The carvings depicted a great cataclysm that had nearly obliterated Ethera eons ago. Amid scenes of devastation, figures resembling Kaide stood with arms outstretched, channeling some unseen force to heal the wounded world. "It's you," Chris said, his voice tinged with wonder and trepidation. "Or others like you." Kaide's heart raced as she absorbed the implications. "This can't be coincidence," she murmured. "We need answers." Chris nodded, his teeth clenched. "The Etherian elders. If anyone knows the truth about this, it's them." Their decision made, they gathered their meager supplies and set out at dawn. The journey to the elders' hidden enclave was fraught with danger. They traversed treacherous ravines, narrowly avoided the maw of a colossal carnivorous plant, and outmaneuvered a pack of sleek, six-legged predators that stalked them for days. As they traveled, Chris and Kaide found solace in each other's company. Around the flickering light of their campfires, Chris shared stories of human customs and emotions, his eyes sparkling as he described the concept of romantic love. Kaide, in turn, opened up about her deep connection to Ethera, guiding Chris's hand to feel the planet's energy thrumming through a gnarled tree trunk. Their bond deepened with each passing day, blossoming into something neither of them fully understood but both cherished fiercely. After weeks of arduous travel, they crested a mist-shrouded peak and beheld a hidden valley. Nestled among towering trees and cascading waterfalls stood an ancient village of stone and living wood, the sanctuary of the Etherian elders. As they approached, a wizened figure emerged from the largest structure. His weathered face was etched with the wisdom of centuries, and his eyes held the depth of Ethera itself. "Welcome, Cade of the Stars and Chris of the Forest," the elder said, his voice as ancient as the rocks beneath their feet. "I am Takaru. We have been expecting you." Cade's breath caught in her throat. "You know who I am?" Takaru nodded solemnly. "Your coming was foretold long ago. You are a sign, child of two worlds, that Ethera faces grave peril once more." He ushered them into a circular chamber, its walls adorned with familiar hieroglyphs. As Takaru spoke of prophecies and planet-wide dangers, Chris and Cade exchanged worried glances. "The source of the threat, and its cure, lie within the Etherian cradle," Takaru explained, pointing to a map etched into the chamber's floor. "But reaching it will not be easy. The Iconians guard it fiercely." Chris's fists clenched at his sides. "Then we'll fight our way through." Takaru shook his head. "Not alone. You must gather allies, unite the people of Ethera against this common foe." Cade's mind raced with the enormity of the task before them. "We'll start with the Primal tribes," she said, meeting Chris's determined gaze. "Your father—" "Will be a hard sell," Chris finished, "but we have to try." As they prepared to leave the elder's sanctuary, Takaru placed a gnarled hand on Cade's shoulder. "Remember, child, your power, combined with the strength of your human companions, is the key to Ethera's salvation." With renewed purpose, Chris and Cade set out to rally the Primal tribes. Little did they know of the chaos unfolding in the colony, where Governor Nolan Saldana was about to make a fateful decision, and Prince Zoran's true intentions were poised to plunge Ethera into war. The sun rose over Ethera's lush forests as Chris and Cade set out to unite the Primal tribes. Their first stop was Chris's own people, the Morales clan. As they approached the village, tension hung thick in the air. Chief Aaron Morales stood at the edge of the settlement, his weathered face etched with conflicting emotions. "So the prodigal son returns," he said, his voice gruff. Chris stepped forward, meeting his father's gaze. "We need your help, father. All of Ethera is in danger." For hours they spoke of the Iconian threat, the plague, and the ancient prophecies. Cade demonstrated her powers, healing a wounded hunter with a touch of her hand. Whispers of awe rippled through the gathered tribe. Chief Aaron's eyes narrowed. "And what of the colony? Will they stand with us?" "We have allies there too," Chris replied. "Governor Saldana—" A commotion at the village's edge cut him short. A group of bedraggled humans stumbled into view, led by a fierce-looking woman with close-cropped hair and a plasma rifle slung across her back. "Sergeant Lena Valdez," she introduced herself, her voice hoarse. "Governor Saldana's been captured. The colony's fallen to Prince Zoran." The news hit like a thunderbolt. Chris and Cade exchanged grim looks, knowing their task had just become infinitely more difficult. Over the next weeks, they traversed Ethera's diverse landscapes, from steaming jungles to windswept plains. At each tribal settlement, they shared their story, demonstrated Cade's connection to the planet, and slowly built a coalition. Sergeant Valdez proved an invaluable ally, her military expertise complementing the Primal tribe's knowledge of the land. Together, they forged a plan to liberate the colony and confront the Iconians at the Etherian cradle. As their ragtag army grew, so did the attacks from Iconian patrols. In one particularly vicious skirmish, Chris watched in horror as a young tribal warrior fell, a gaping wound in his chest. Cade rushed to the fallen fighter's side, her hands glowing with ethereal energy. The wound knitted itself closed, but the effort left Cade gasping and pale. "Your powers are growing stronger," Chris observed, helping her to her feet. Cade nodded, her eyes distant, and more unpredictable. "I can feel Ethera's pain, Chris. It's overwhelming." Their journey took them through treacherous mountain passes and across raging rivers. Casualties mounted, but so did their purpose. With each victory, each life saved by Keed's healing touch, their belief in their cause deepened. Finally, they reached the foothills of an ancient, mist-shrouded volcano. Elder Takaru, who had joined them on their quest, pointed toward its peak. "The cradle lies within," he said solemnly, "but be warned, the closer we get, the more Keed's powers may fluctuate." As if in response to his words, Kaid stumbled, her skin flickering with impossibly strong energy. Chris caught her, alarm etched on his face. "I'm fine," she insisted, but her voice was strained. "We have to keep moving." They pressed on, the air growing thicker with each step. Keed's condition worsened, her body racked with tremors as Ethera's energy surged through her. Suddenly she cried out, her eyes blazing with unearthly light. A massive wave of energy exploded from her body, knocking everyone off their feet and leaving a scene of chaos in its wake. As the dust settled, Chris scrambled to Keed's side. She lay unconscious, her breath shallow. With a sinking heart, he realized the truth. Keed was a living conduit for Ethera's power, and the closer they got to the cradle, the more unstable she became. "We can't turn back now," Sergeant Valdez said, helping others to their feet. "We'll carry her if we have to." Chris nodded grimly, lifting Kaid into his arms. As they continued their ascent, the mist parted to reveal their destination, an ancient temple built into the heart of the volcano, its spires reaching toward the sky. And arrayed before it, a sea of Iconian soldiers, their weapons trained on the approaching rebels. At their head stood a towering figure in gleaming armor, his face a mask of cruel dedication. Commander Varric, the Iconian military leader. "So," he called out, his voice carrying across the battlefield, "the primitives have come to die." Chris tightened his grip on Kaid, feeling her stir weakly in his arms. Behind him, the united tribes and colonial rebels readied their weapons. The final battle for Ethera was about to begin. The air crackled with tension as the two forces faced each other across the volcanic battlefield. Commander Varric's sneer was visible even from a distance, his armored form a gleaming beacon of Iconian superiority. Chris gently lowered Kaid to the ground, her body still racked with tremors from the surging energy. As he stood, his eyes locked with Varric's, a silent challenge passing between them. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to shake violently. Fissures opened in the rocky terrain, spewing forth plumes of noxious gas and molten rock. The cradle was awakening. "Now!" Chris shouted, and the united rebel forces surged forward. The clash was chaotic and brutal. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, met by a hail of arrows and spears from the Primal tribes. Sergeant Valdez led a flanking maneuver, her tactical prowess evident as she outmaneuvered the rigid Iconian formations. In the heart of the battle, Chris fought his way toward the temple entrance, determined to reach the cradle. A massive Iconian soldier blocked his path, energy blade humming with deadly intent. Chris ducked under the first swing, feeling the heat of the weapon as it passed inches from his face. He rolled, coming up with a fistful of volcanic ash that he flung into his opponent's eyes. The Iconian stumbled, and Chris seized the opportunity, delivering a crushing blow that sent the alien sprawling. As he neared the temple steps, a familiar voice rang out. "Chris, wait!" He turned to see Prince Zoran, his regal bearing at odds with the carnage surrounding them. The Iconian prince's eyes were wide with an emotion Chris had never seen in them before. Fear. "Something's wrong," Zoran said, his voice strained. "The cradle. It's not responding as it should. We need to stop this before—" His words were cut short as a deafening roar filled the air. The temple doors burst open, revealing a blinding light that pulsed with otherworldly power. In its center stood Kaid, her body seemingly made of pure energy. "Kaid!" Chris called out, but his voice was lost in the maelstrom of sound and fury. Kaid's glowing form turned toward them, her eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. When she spoke, her voice echoed with the power of Ethera itself. "Prince Zoran," she intoned, "witness the truth of your people's history." A wave of energy washed over them. And suddenly Chris found himself immersed in a vision of staggering beauty and terror. He saw the birth of Aethera, watched as it seeded life throughout the cosmos. He felt the profound connection between all living things, a bond that transcended time and space. But then the vision darkened. He witnessed the Iconians fall from grace, their corruption of Aethera's gifts, the creation of the plague that now threatened to consume everything. As the vision faded, Chris saw Zoran fall to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "What have we done?" the prince whispered, his voice broken. Before anyone could respond, Commander Varek's enraged roar split the air. The Iconian leader charged toward the temple, his face contorted with madness and hate. "No!" Zoran cried out, but it was too late. Varek reached the pulsing heart of the cradle, his armored hands grasping at the swirling energy. The temple shuddered, stones cracking and falling as the very foundations of Aethera seemed to rebel against this violation. Chris watched in horror as Cade's luminous form began to flicker and fade. Her eyes met his, filled with sorrow and tenacity. "Chris," her voice echoed in his mind, "I have to contain this. It's the only way to save Aethera." He shook his head, refusing to accept what he knew she was about to do. "There has to be another way," he pleaded. Cade's ethereal hand caressed his cheek, a touch that burned with the intensity of a star. "I love you," she whispered, "but this is my purpose, my destiny." As the temple began to collapse around them, Chris felt strong hands pulling him back. He fought against them, desperate to reach Cade, but it was futile. The last thing he saw before being dragged from the crumbling ruin was Cade's form dissolving into pure light, merging with the pulsing heart of the cradle. Her sacrifice would save them all, but at a cost that tore Chris's heart to shreds. Outside, the battlefield had fallen silent. Iconian and rebel alike stood transfixed as waves of energy rippled across the planet's surface. Trees sprouted from barren ground, withered plants burst into vibrant life, and the very air seemed to hum with renewed vitality. In the midst of this miraculous rebirth, Chris fell to his knees, overwhelmed by loss and wonder in equal measure. The battle was over, but the true test of healing and rebuilding was just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.